4 great sponsors. They've helped us purchase the FeedLoop platform. When you came into SpeakAid, that's what we're using. That's a company based in Toronto. They gave us a great discount as well. So shout out to FeedLoop. That's PheedLoop.com, FeedLoop. Pretty cool virtual platform. They're used to doing events, like physical events, and the virtual stuff is on the side bit. So for me to call them up and say, hey, I want to do a complete 5-day, 8-a-day speaker session, they're like, yeah, sure, we could probably figure that out. And they've been amazing. So a big shout out to the guys at FeedLoop in Toronto for helping me put this all together. And my main man on the background there is Tim McDonald in Tampa. He's been a wonderful co-host and helping us make sure that you're all prepared to be part of these sessions. Okay, so we want your chat open. We want your chat open because we want this to be interactive. And I tell you, this is going to be one of the more interactive sessions of the 40 that we've got slated this week. Brant is amazing. And what you'll see is in his talk a little bit about purpose. I'll set Brant up in a second. He's not only not using slides, he's using overhead cameras. If you, like, this is just going to blow your mind. I don't know if he has a hovercraft or a drone. I'm not sure how he's done it, but he's got something right above his head. You're going to see he's got great hair. I've got none, but he's got this camera. It's going down. He's going to sketch things for you. And true rock star. So Tim, I think you're going to put in the link to the COVID-19 donation. It's an authorized Square site. Trust me, I'm not saving up for money when we can fly again, go down to Cocoa Beach and sort of hang out with Brant and over on the other side with Tim. I'd love to, but that's not where the money's going. The money is going to help those afflicted by COVID-19, Red Crescent, Red Cross. We're doing a good job. We hope to get to 20 grand by the end of the week. So if you have it in you, $5, $10, 50, 500. If you donate 500, by the way, I'm sending you 15 of my books for free. So just a heads up for that. Wherever you live, I don't care if you're in Antarctica. Might cost a lot more for me, but I don't care. That's the point. So let me introduce Brant Menswar. Okay, critically acclaimed author, award-winning musician, and CEO and founder of Rockstar Impact. If that doesn't blow your mind yet, which is the boutique agency that teaches people and organizations how to cultivate values-based leadership and activate organizational values to help connect the head and the heart. His unique and compelling approach of using music to build bridges across generational, gender, and competency-based gaps has changed what's possible for industry-leading organizations like, drumroll, Netflix, Verizon, St. Jude Children's Research Hospital, Microsoft, Hilton, and dozens more. Now, sidebar note, I have a book called The Purpose Effect, and I was so excited because I've never seen Brant do his thing before. So I'm going to be like a raging lunatic fan as he brings out his topic today. He's passionate, engaging, and transformational. Brant encourages audiences to move forward with deliberate intention. His interactive and entertaining techniques, as you'll see, of defining what matters most compels audiences to dive deeper into their lives, identify their core values, and give them the airplay needed to become life-changing anthems that change what's possible. With that, the rock star himself, let's put him up. Over to you, buddy.
Thank you so much, Dan. I appreciate that. I always like to start off with a song, if that's all right with everybody. I'm going to do it anyways, so you might as well just come along for the ride, right? Here we go. Baby, I'm here all alone. Why won't you pick up your phone? Full of a whiskey, feeling kind of good. I sure wish you would. It's 2:15. Last call went out, but still know you. Oh, I'm stumbling home with you on my mind. I wish for some your love. Here we go. Ooh, ooh, ooh. I need that loving. Ooh, ooh, ooh. Me and you under the covers. Ooh, ooh, ooh. You gotta breathe. bring that love to me. This is called a trash can ending. It's to let you all know when to clap. I'm giving you that moment. Clappity clap, clap, clap. There we go. Well, as Dan said, my name is Brant Menswar, and I am formerly with the band Big Kettle Drum. Pause for applause. Thank you. Listen, if you've never heard of Big Kettle Drum, you must not watch Animal Planet, because we were huge on Animal Planet. If you needed background music for bears doing it in the woods, we were your band. I wish I were lying. But unfortunately, that was the truth. That was the truth. And that's okay. You know, as long as the check's cash, we don't really care. So we're going to talk today about purpose. And I am so very excited about it. So when we talk about purpose, I guess the first thing I really want to know from you all, and feel free, I want to see these in the chat, right? I want to see your answers in the chat. When you think of purpose, what do you think of? What is purpose to you? What is it? I'd love to see what your thought is. What is purpose to you? You are a way of being at all times, a guiding star. Fantastic. It's drive. It's a meaningful goal. Purpose is passion. Look at all these answers. It's very interesting, right? Something to work towards. But it's, I love this. It's my reason. It's the why, right? And that is really where things start to get interesting. So I think that when we talk about purpose, what I really want to know is, what does it mean to do something on purpose? So if purpose is your why, what does doing something on purpose mean to you? So we see now that if it's self-expression, it's a reason for doing. I see all those answers. That's fantastic. But what I really want to know is, if you're doing something on purpose, what does that mean? And Michelle hits it right away, right? So I love it. She flat out says that doing something on purpose means you're doing it intentionally. So we've been told for many, many, many years that purpose is our why, and it really means being intentional, right? Which is great. And I wouldn't disagree that that is sort of what we think of when we think about doing something on purpose. But as we look a little bit closer as to what purpose actually is, you know, I've traveled around the country doing talks for many years now, and I've asked this question to everyone. I said, if you could tell me within one or two succinct sentences exactly what your life's purpose is, why you chose it, and give me a couple of stories so that I know where it's based out of, the amount of people who can actually do it on the call like that is a fraction of a percent. And so if we don't know truly what our purpose is, how can we do anything on purpose? And that's where the challenge comes from, especially as leaders. If we're supposed to lead on purpose, the very first thing we have to understand is that we have to know what our purpose is. So if it's so important and so many of us can't actually succinctly tell people what it is, why is it so difficult to find purpose? I'm going to tell you my opinion is that it's because we've been lied to our whole lives. You see, purpose isn't something you find. Purpose is something you choose. But if we want it to be a meaningful choice, we're going to have to actually understand a couple of things first. You see, the idea that we have to find our purpose is daunting, right? It's why many of us, we don't actually ever go searching for it, because we have this in our heads, at least for me, it's like this Indiana Jones like quest of what our purpose is. And what I'm going to tell you today is that you don't need to be Indiana Jones to go out and find your purpose. You've already found the temple of bullshit. You don't have to look. The truth is we choose our purpose. And so how do we make it a meaningful choice? Well, if we're going to do that, we actually have to start with what? What are our non-negotiables? What are those things that matter most to us? Those are where we start if we're going to make a meaningful choice of what our purpose actually is. So I like to call those non-negotiables, those things that mean the most to us. I actually like to call those our black sheep. Now, I have spent the majority of my life in many ways feeling like a black sheep. And I think that the idea that we all have in our heads when it comes to the term black sheep is a negative connotation, right? It carries this connotation that black sheep are outcasts or they're somehow difficult to deal with. But as I sort of dug into the foundations of where the term comes from, what I realized is that our perception of black sheep is based on a falsehood. And what I'm about to tell you has so much power and acceptance in it that it literally has the ability to change your life. I believe that with my whole heart. And the truth is this: the reason that farmers don't value black sheep like the rest of the flock is because a black sheep's wool cannot be dyed. So a black sheep is in effect 100% authentically original. So how does that factor in with our what? Well, it factors in because those things that are our non-negotiables are actually our black sheep values, right? There are black sheep values. And what I mean by that is just like a black sheep's wool, these are the things that no matter what someone says to you, no matter how much they want to influence you or try to change who you are, you will not be moved because these are the values that will not change, just like a black sheep's wool. And so when we understand and identify what those black sheep values are, it allows us to start to begin to live our lives on purpose. You see, I believe we all have a flock of 5. I believe we all have a flock of 5 black sheep values that serve as our sort of our North Star. It's our compass, right? So when I do work with people, I have them fill out a worksheet, it's a values worksheet. It has about 125 commonly held core values. And the very first thing that I ask people to do, and I'm actually going to share this with you all. I'll put it in the chat. I'll give you a link to it so you can go and download it for free and do this yourself, because it's going to really tell you a lot about sort of where you stand right now with regards to the things that matter most to you and how you treat them. So this worksheet has about 125 commonly held core values, and it's a surface dive, right? And all I want you to do is go through and I want you to look at all of those words, and I want you to circle all the words that really resonate with you, right? You look at them and you go, oh, accountability, that really resonates with me. Oh, empathy, that really resonates with me. And you start circling them all. And what I find is that over 90% of the people that I do this exercise with circle over 30 words. And so why does that matter? Well, when you circle over 30 words, what I like to say is this is what crippling anxiety and depression looks like, because you've set yourself up for failure. There is no way that you can honor 30 or more things in your life on a daily basis. Because the truth is, even if you honored 29 of the 30, you know, if you're like me, we always focus on the one that failed us. And so how do we get out of the things that are simply important and move towards the things that actually resonate in our hearts, that are those non-negotiable black sheep values? Well, the reason that we want to find those black sheep values is because it keeps us from doing something that is very, very dangerous. And that's this: it keeps us from winging it. Now, I don't know if you're familiar with the term winging it, But the phrase winging it actually comes from the theater. Around 1900, there was a boom in American population. And Americans had jobs, had a little extra money. And so we started to build these playhouses at a rapid rate. And so we ended up with more playhouses than we had actors. And so what happened was every time an actor got hurt or they were sick, you had to have these people come and fill in. And so they would come to the theater, they would stand in the wings of the theater, and they would frantically try to memorize all of their lines before they got on stage. And that's where the term winging it actually comes from, right? Well, it was something that was designed for an emergency. Fast forward 100 plus years, and many of us have adopted that as a way of life. You see, if you can't tell me what your 5 black sheep values are, then I have news for you. You're winging it. You're winging it. And as a control freak, that was hard for me to hear. It was hard for me to believe that I'm incredibly competitive, and I'm pushing, and I'm being intentional with what I want. But without knowing those things that matter most to me, there's no way for me to not wing it. Because if I'm going to do anything on purpose, I have to actually make my decisions filtered through those flock of 5. And that's where things start to get really interesting. So what I want to say is this: how do we get there? Now that you know the importance of identifying your black sheep values, I can tell you that that is where our purpose comes from, because it's in the activation of those values that we choose our purpose. You see, if you gave me and told me what your purpose was, and it didn't include any of those black sheep values, I'm going to tell you that that's not your purpose. That's why we can't start with why. You have to define the what before you choose the why if you want to find alignment between those two things. And that's where sometimes we get it backwards. And so what I really want to do is I want to ask you this question. I want to know, what is one of your top 3 favorite movies of all time? In the chat right now, hit me with one of your top 3. I mean, one of those ones that comes on TV and you simply can't turn it off. What is one of your top 3 movies of all time? So I love these. Look at the answers. Out of Africa, Shawshank Redemption, Princess Bride, Donnie Darko. Wow. Animal House. We're going to have a chat when we're done here. Point Break. Cujo. Allison Levine has selected Cujo. If you don't know Allison Levine, she is a complete rock star and one of the most popular speakers on the planet. And you would know that that is an appropriate movie for Miss Levine. Cujo is appropriate. Look at Philadelphia Story, Heat, Gone with the Wind, Gattaca, My Left Foot. Look at all the different, I love this. And so why am I asking you this? Well, it's because our black sheep values, if we really want to prove that they are real, we need to look at our favorites. See, there's a reason that we have favorites, and that's because our head and our heart connect. So we have these things in our heart that matter most to us that are developed over the course of our lives. And we have these experiences that we remember in our head. And when we combine those two things together, it engages our limbic brain, which is where all of our emotional long-term memory is stored. And it's why you remember the lyrics to your favorite song. So it's also why we remember what our favorite movies are. And so interesting, when you see some of these, I've been asking this question to tens of thousands of people over the last year at all my talks. And the top 2 movies I represented in here, number 2 is The Princess Bride. The number 2 most popular answer to what your favorite movie is. Number 1 is Shawshank Redemption. And so what I do when I ask people what their favorite movie is I say, look, give me a 30-second synopsis as to what the movie's about. Give me the gist, right? Give me the Cliff Notes version. And what I do in that time frame is I listen to the words they choose, because if something is your favorite, it actually affects the words you choose to describe the movie. So my favorite movie of all time is Happy Gilmore. That should explain almost everything you need to know about me in one movie, right? So for me, I had that as my favorite movie, and I thought, on the surface, maybe it's because it's an idiotic comedy, and that's my type of comedy. That's what makes me really laugh. On the other side, I said, Adam Sandler and I are from the same hometown. We went to the same high school. He's a couple years older than me. Maybe it's just love for the hometown boy done good. But when I looked at it through the lens of my black sheep values, that's when things started to make sense. You see, my black sheep values are creativity, hope, impact, empathy, family, and authenticity. Now, you math nerds out there right now are like, that's 6. I know it's 6. I'm a rock star. We do everything to excess. Get over it, right? I have 6. I know I said you have a flock of 5. I happen to have an extra. That's okay. Yes. Anne told me that was 6. Yes. Thank you for the scolding of my mathletes. I appreciate that. So, creativity, hope, impact, empathy, family, authenticity. Let's look at the movie Happy Gilmore through the lens of that. So for those of you that have seen Happy Gilmore, you know that the way that he hit a golf ball was not normal, right? Happy Gilmore hit a golf ball by literally running up and taking a wild swing at that ball. It was not how the average golfer takes a swing. So is it creative? Yeah, absolutely. Okay. That black sheep is getting fed because creativity exists in that movie. My next one is hope. So for those of you that have seen it, here's the question. What is the one thing that Happy Gilmore wanted to do more than anything else in life? What was his life's goal? What was it that he was trying so hard to achieve? Do you know what it was? For those of you that have seen it? To play hockey. That is correct, Jennifer. That is exactly what he wanted to do. So I grew up being bred to play baseball my whole life. That was it. I was going to play professional baseball. I was on that path. I had a very successful amateur career. I broke my shoulder. It went away. I never got to reach that. But I understand what it's like to hold on to that hope more than anything that you've got in your life, because I did it for many, many, many years. Hope, second black sheep, also being fed. I'm 2 for 2. My next one is impact, right? Happy Gilmore going to play on the PGA Tour, right, is what he decides he's going to go out because he needs to make some quick cash. And so he goes out onto the PGA Tour. And all of a sudden, people come from out of the woods, and I mean that literally, right? They show up to these golf events where typically you've got your golf shirts and your button-ups and your khakis, and these people show up with their beer helmets, their cut-off jean shorts. And I'm just going to say, if you own a pair of cut-off jean shorts, I have a special session for you when this is over that we can talk through, because you need to burn those, really. It's not 1973, okay? So they would show up. And so would you say that he had that sort of an impact on the communities that he was playing in? The answer is absolutely yes. I'm 3 for 3. Well, my next is empathy. Did Happy Gilmore ever make it to play professional hockey? The answer is no. The answer is no. So I have walked a mile in those shoes. I know what it's like to plan for something your whole life and have it taken away from you. So yeah, I'm 4 for 4. So my next is family. Why did Happy Gilmore join the tour? What was it that he was trying to do on that tour? What was he trying to do? There's a very specific reason he needed to raise a bunch of money. Do you remember what it was? To help his grandma. There it is. God, Jennifer, I think I'm falling in love with you. She has all the answers to my favorite movie, and it speaks to my heart, right? So I'm sitting here and I'm looking at the movie, and yeah, he's trying to raise the money because his grandma hadn't paid taxes in decades, and he needs to buy the house back. So there's family. I'm 5 for 5. And then finally, authenticity. That's the last bit, right? And so my favorite scene in the whole movie, is he is about to ask out Julie Bowen, who plays for Modern Family, right? She plays the PGA press sort of agent on the tour. And he asks her on a date. And she says to him, "Oh, I'm sorry, I don't date golfers." And he looked at her and he goes, "Well, that's good, because I'm a hockey player." Right? And that, to know who you are, even when you're not doing what you think you're meant to do, is everything. It's everything. And so I look at that and I'm like, of course it's my favorite movie. It fed every single one of my black sheep values, right? Every one of them was addressed. And of course, those are the reasons why we have favorites. It's why you have favorite songs. It's why you have favorite smells, right? My favorite smell on the planet is lilacs, right? Why? Because when I was a kid, every time I drove to my grandmother's house and opened the door of our Chevy Caprice classic wagon, that 90-foot long fake wood on the side piece of crap, I would smell lilacs because she had this huge lilac bush on the side of her house. And so whenever I smell lilacs now, it reminds me of my grandmother. And so that favorite smell is tied to my black sheep value of family. So those are the reasons that we start to have favorites. And so the idea of identifying what our black sheep values are and sort of confirming them by looking at our favorites is because the idea here is we really want proof. We want proof. And the reason that we want proof is because when you have proof, you don't need belief. For any of you out there, when you're trying to lead your teams, if you said, look, believe me, I'm going to take care of you. Believe me, I'm going to get this done. How hard is it to believe when you don't have proof? When you have proof, you don't need belief. And so the reason that we want to identify these black sheep values, this flock of five, is so that we can start to create the proof that we need so that people understand who we are and what matters most to us. So what that leads to is us living with deliberate intention. When we live with deliberate intention, it allows us to become conscious creators of our own reality. And that is really the goal, is to become conscious creators. And here's where is the difference between simply being intentional. So Big Kettle Drum, my band, recorded our last record a few years ago. We were in LA. We were recording with Bob Dylan's band. It was like a once in a lifetime opportunity. So we said, let's go do it. And we drove from Central Florida to LA because we are tone snobs and we wanted our own gear and our own guitars and all that sort of junk. And so we drove 3,000 miles across the country. We recorded for a week, had this amazing experience, and then we drive back. And as we're driving back, when you're in the band, you just driving is what you do, right? You're basically a taxi driver between gigs because you just are simply always on the road. And if you just heard Peter before me, you know that it's what happens when you're a musician, right? Especially a touring musician. And so it's about 6 a.m. We cross the New Mexico state line. There's not another car in sight. And in my rearview mirror, I see blue lights. And I am like, you've got to be kidding me. You've got to be kidding me. What is going on? I wasn't speeding. I knew that maybe I have a taillight out. I don't know. So I pull over and the cop comes up to the window. And he looks at me and he goes, do you know you were traveling in the left-hand lane? And I was like, so? And he says, well, it's against the law in this state to be in the left-hand lane unless you're passing. Well, I professed my ignorance. I said, look, I'm from Florida. We don't have laws when it comes to driving. We do whatever we want to do, right? I professed my ignorance. He let me off with a warning. And I adopted that right-hand lane for the rest of my traveling back to Florida. Now, I knew my destination. I was heading back home, but I wasn't acting with deliberate intention. And that's what I often find. Many of us live our lives hopefully heading in the right direction, but we're in the wrong lane. We are oblivious to the rules that come when you establish your black sheep values. You see, your values, those black sheep, provide the box from which you are going to function within. You say, here are the boundaries of what I'm telling you matters most to me. And as long as I do things to honor and stay inside those boundaries, I am good to go. But the minute I violate one of those boundaries, that's when things get sticky.
That's when they don't feel good, right? That's when you start to have feelings like shame and depression and anxiety get invited to the party, is because you're violating the things that matter most. And if you haven't taken the time to figure out and discover what those black sheep values are, you can never put your finger on why you feel the way you do. And that's one of the reasons that we need to discover them. So we become conscious creators of our own life rather than unconscious creators that are simply headed in the right direction. I don't want to leave my success up to accident or luck. I need to be deliberate with my intention. So I actually have to choose, and this is where the rubber hits the road. I have to choose when and where my black sheep appear on a daily basis. I have to speak them into existence. I look at my calendar. I look at my appointments. And next to every appointment, next to every name, you will see one or more of my black sheep values written into my calendar, because I am going to make sure that they appear. I am going to speak them into existence. I am not going to rely on luck or an accident for the right moment to appear. I'm not doing that. So why am I telling you all this? I'm telling you all this because I've watched my life change. When I started living on purpose, and the only way to live on purpose is to live in alignment with those black sheep values, to speak them into existence, to choose when and where they show up. The only way I was able to do that is to start with the what. Now, how did that affect me in my life? In 2012, I have two boys. I've been married for 26 years. When my oldest son, Theo, was 14 years old, he was diagnosed with a rare blood cancer, and he needed a bone marrow transplant to survive. So we approached it with guns a-blazing, right? We wanted to go in positive, and he's going to beat this, and it's what's going to happen. And so what ended up happening was he got the transplant. He developed something called graft versus host disease, which is everybody who gets a transplant gets this disease, right? And it's basically the marrow that gets inserted into your body doesn't recognize the environment of which it's been placed, and it begins to attack the organs. And so the way that they treat that in the hospital is they super suppress your immune system so the body won't fight back. And so that's what they did. Theo had level 4. It only has 4 levels. Level 4 will kill you. And so they suppressed his immune system. And when he did that, he ended up contracting a deadly fungus while he was in the hospital. And unfortunately, the treatment of the fungus was to super boost the immune system. So he had 2 things that were killing him with opposite treatments. And so one afternoon, my wife and I get called into the parents' lounge of Florida Hospital for Children. And what ends up happening is there's 3 or 4 doctors sitting in the room. They look at my wife and I, and they say, listen, we are so sorry, but there's nothing else we can do. We don't think he's going to make it through the night, and you should call your family in to say goodbye. That is not what we expected. And so, I grab my wife's hand. We start to walk back to our son's room. We have to grab his younger brother, who's 4 years younger than him. And we have to find a way to sit on the edge of the bed and say our goodbyes. And for those of you that are parents, sitting on the edge of your bed and hearing your child say, I'm going to miss you, Daddy. It's you don't get over it, right? So my brother lives in New Hampshire, where I'm from, and I had to call him and say, look, you're not going to have time. So if you're going to say your goodbyes, you need to do it now. And so he did. He was incredibly distraught, as you can imagine. And he decides to sit on his couch. After he hung up the phone, he felt helpless. And so he wanted to do something. And so he sat on his couch. He created 55 poster boards that explained the scenario. My nephew is dying. He has less than 24 hours. He's got graft versus host disease. He's got mucormycosis. We've tried this. We've tried that. He's on these drugs. If you know anyone, if you have any ideas, please help us. He never said a word. He played the song Fix You by Coldplay in the background. and he uploaded it to YouTube. I sat on the edge of my son's bed all night waiting for him to pass. He made it through the night. And the next morning, my phone is ringing off the hook, and I'm trying to ignore it. I'm trying to be in the moment. I want to spend every last second that I can. And after a couple of hours, my phone is literally hot to touch. So I finally pick it up and I look, and I have all of these messages and numbers that I don't recognize, and all of these emails that had come in. You see, what had happened was that video that my brother uploaded, by the time I picked up my phone, had been seen by over 500,000 people. And I was getting calls from doctors from all over the world who said, I saw this video and I think I might be able to help. We got a call from a doctor at MD Anderson in Houston who said, there's this experimental treatment that I think might help. Can I talk to your doctor? And then I got a call from Dr. Tim Johnson from Good Morning America. And he said, you tell your doctor anyone he wants to speak to, get me a list. I'll make it happen in the next 24 hours. So we made a list, and Dr. Johnson did exactly what he said he was going to do. And we talked to somebody at Dana-Farber in Boston, and we talked to a research scientist at Cornell, and the four doctors put their heads together and they came up with this crazy plan to save Theo's life. It worked. It worked. Theo just turned 22 years old, started his first semester of college, the first time he's been in a classroom with other people since the 8th grade. Why do I tell you that story? I am telling you that story because it took 500,000 people to speak their black sheep values into existence to prove that they could change what was possible. You see, we were told it was an impossible situation. And the truth was that that was the truth in the room, but it wasn't the actual truth. And when we choose to define these black sheep values and speak them into existence, you don't understand that it's not just for you. It actually affects everyone around you. And because of these 500,000 people, I can walk 2 doors over and hug my son, which I could never be more thankful for. It's why I want you to do the work. It's why I need you to define these things that matter most to you. You see, when you do that, you're not just helping yourself, you're helping everyone. And in this day and age, at this time where we are faced with so much uncertainty, there has never been a better time for you to discover the things that matter most. Because if you're not holding on to those black sheep right now, I don't know what you're holding on to. Thank you all so much for spending some time with me today. I loved it, and I look forward to answering your questions in the few minutes we've got left. Dan, thank you, brother.
Brant, oh my God, people are going to need a second here to process what you shared. Both, I mean, the lead up to your story with your son, first of all, what a hallelujah that happened, and 500,000 black sheep came to the rescue. That is just an amazing, amazing sense of purpose. Wow. Okay, I got questions, but I'm going to get to the ones that are here already. Again, a reminder for those in the chat, ask the question in the Q&A so we get it in the queue here. It's a little easier to manage. This one from Erica.
Yep.
Are the black sheep values, are they ones that are not supposed to change ever? Or as our lives change, are they sort of adjust with the individual? Do we need to relook at them every couple of years? Like, what's the deal with your black sheep values?
That's a great question. That's actually a great question. And so the truth is that as we get older, by the time we are in our late teens, early 20s, most of our core values have already been established. And so the way that I break it up, I break it into the what, the why, and the how, right? So the what are those black sheep values that we possess, and those are developed over the course of our lifetimes. And outside of a catastrophic event in your life, they rarely change. Yeah. Now, the why, if we start with the what, we go to the why. The why becomes our purpose, and it is actually the activation of those black sheep values. So mine being creativity, hope, impact, empathy, family, authenticity. My purpose is to creatively impact people's lives by authentically providing hope. And why that sounds so familiar is because it includes my black sheep values. It's how they're in alignment with each other and why it becomes so powerful to witness, and why it becomes my biggest bow in my quiver, right? Because it's that authenticity. It is that undyeable black sheep wool that exists, that only belongs to me and no one else. So what I think most people confuse is the how. So if we've got values, purpose, the last is mission. And people have a tendency to make mission into something more or bigger than it is, right? They
Totally
think of missionaries,
yeah.
right?
Yeah,
and
exactly.
so my mission has got to be, I got to go to, some other side of the planet, and I've got to be in a village with no running water. And I've got to, they make it this thing that's almost unattainable. And
it's not eat, pray, love every day.
Honestly, a mission is nothing more than a self-imposed task. That is literally the definition of a mission. And so when you think of it that way, our mission changes all the time with every interaction, with everything we do on a daily basis. Our mission will change. Our what and our why rarely change, but the how changes all the time.
Yeah, situational, scenario, aging, whatever, right? Pandemics.
Yeah. So the perfect example would be, my father is just turned 77 years old a couple days ago. Was a school teacher for 35 years. He fed his sheep one way for 35 years. I can't go to the supermarket without him having a 10-minute conversation with the person bagging our groceries, because he's trying to feed his sheep, because he doesn't have a classroom full of kids anymore. And so you have to start to understand that that's what you witness. When you see the people, especially in recent retirees, why they are busier now than when they were working is because they're trying to figure out that how part. They know what their black sheep or their purpose might be, but they have to fulfill it in a different way. And so they're trying a million different things to try to figure out what feels best to them.
You did something about 2 minutes ago that just was so natural, yet I don't think people picked up on that, and I want to ask you the question about it. And that is, you just rhymed off a declaration of purpose, just as if, it was something that has been with you forever. And I similarly advocate, because you and I are two purpose brothers together here, yes, about this declaration of purpose, like a 1 or 2 line statement that defines you, acts as your personal North Star, that people will view you as when you leave a room. Like, did that guy actually do what he said he was going to do? Does he advocate for his purpose? Does he enact it? Yeah. So what's your tip or tips for people to create their own sort of purpose statement?
Yeah. So this is where I would disagree with the brilliant Simon Sinek, right? And so his book that he wrote is a fantastic book, but I believe in our world, in the music world, we have something called pre-production, right? So when you get into the studio to record your record, you don't show up blindly and just start to record. There are months and months worth of pre-production, which is you send lyric sheets, you send chord sheets, you record little demos, they track it in what they call in the box, which means in the computer. They sort of lay out the structure of the song. And when you show up, you start replacing parts that they have programmed in as placeholders, right? Mm-hmm. So I feel like you can't start with why until you do a little bit of pre-production. And that comes from defining these things, these non-negotiables, those black sheep values, right? When you define those things, then you start to realize what matters most. You prove that they are in fact your sheep and you're not caring for somebody else's, which is often what happens. And then you can say, okay, how can I take these words and activate them in a purpose that is in alignment with the things that truly matter to me? So if you don't do that work and you just start with why, what are the odds that your purpose will include even one of the things that matter most to you? If you don't take the time to define them, it's like craps. I mean, you are literally Vegas odds, and the house always wins. You know that. And so you can't do that. You've got to define these things first, activate them in a purpose statement, is what you heard from me, to creatively impact people's lives by authentically providing hope. That is why I get up every day. That is what feeds all of the reason and the commitment that I have for the things that I choose to invest my time in. It's because they contain those black sheep values that they resonate with me more than anything else that I would simply pick out of the sky that sounds good. But the truth is, black sheep don't live in the future. They live in the present. And we have to define those things in the present. Otherwise, we end up with aspirational values, which are who we want to be, but they're not who we are, so they're not real. And that's the hardest thing for us to understand sometimes.
So good, man. Our common friend, Jesse Finkelstein, wants to know if you're writing a book about this whole thing. And I know the answer to that one.
Certainly am. So listen, Jesse, one of the principals at Page 2, who happens to be my publisher, I will tell you that it's her love for me and this message that convinced me to write a book called Black Sheep. Unleash the Extraordinary, Awe-Inspiring, Undiscovered You. Comes out September 29th. And I am so excited for this thing to come out because it literally gives the roadmap of what you need to do to define these things, to discover your black sheep, to write that purpose statement, and then to speak them into existence. And that is, it's been a year and a half sort of production of this, and what better time to release it than in a global pandemic?
Well, for what it's worth, in my own book called The Purpose Effect, I too took on Cynic and said, it's not start with why, it's what, how, and who are you doing it for? So two brothers from another mother. Brant, I really appreciate your time here. Lots of great comments here in the chat, as you can see. Everyone's loving your story. And, most importantly, obviously, thank God that your son is still with you and your family.
Amen to that. Amen to that.
Yeah. All right, man. Well, thank you. And don't forget to donate, everyone, from Brant's perspective, and the fact that he donated such a story and a book coming out September 29th. Please think about those who are afflicted with COVID-19. Brant, thanks again, brother.
God bless you all. Thank you for having me.
Bye.